All right, guys, I'm going to be going through two different things with you. The first thing I'm going to be going through with you is the paper format for the IA. The second thing that I'm going to be going through with you is the reflection for the IA, which is the third section, which should be about 400 words. So let's just start with the paper format because it's fairly easy to understand. So the first major thing with the paper format is that you need to have a title page. This title page, you need to have your research question and you need to have the total number of words in your entire investigation. That's all three sections. If you look at good example number 2, you can see that they have a title page. In their title page, they have their exact question word for word, quoted and italicized. You can do it that way if you want to, and then the total number of words. If you look at good example number 3, same exact thing, different style. Again, the style does not really matter. It's whatever makes you happy. What is important is that you have this research question word for word exactly how it should be written, and then the total number of words for all three sections combined. Next, you need to have your three sections labeled. One thing I do want to note is you'll see in some of these examples, they have a table of contents. You can put a table of contents, however, it is not needed. It is just an additional thing that some papers have, some don't. I am not requiring a table of contents. However, you do need to have your sections labeled very clearly. They should be bolded. So you should have section 1, and then it should read identification and evaluation of sources. When you get to section 2, it should go to a new page, and it should say section 2 investigation. And section 3 would be again on a new page, and it would say reflection. Okay. Same thing here, section 1. They don't have it worded. You need to have it worded. You need to have it say what it is that you're doing. Okay. Now, when it comes to smaller things, such as it should be double spaced, it should be in 12-point font, and in Times New Roman or something similar. We don't want any like super artistic styles. We want it to be pretty bland, original, things like that. Now, when you are directly referencing graphs and charts, this is only some of you guys, not everyone is going to do this. You are going to need to make that chart or a graph available. Literally, you're going to need a picture of it, or it could be a picture as well. If you're referencing political cartoons, things like that, you will need to make what's called an appendix. The appendix should go before the bibliography. So you should have your reflection. Then if you have any appendix, you should have your appendix and then your bibliography. And you should label it based off of Appendix 1, Appendix 2, Appendix 3, so on and so forth. And it should be organized based off of how you referenced it in the paper. So, for example, if you reference a chart in the very beginning of your paper, that should be the first one, and then a picture, that should be the second, so on and so forth. Again, if you're not referencing any pictures, any charts, any graphs, things like that, you do not need an appendix. But if you do, you should label it as appendix and then put that below the bibliography. For your bibliography, it should be listed in alphabetical order by the last name of the author. Now, some small little Chicago format styles that we need to make sure. One is that you do want to number your pages, but you don't want to number with your title page, meaning you don't want to start with your first page, you want to start with your second page. How you do this is very, very simple. If you're working in Microsoft Word, you're going to click on number page. You're going to click on top of the page. You'll want it in the right-hand side, not the left-hand side. And then when you see it come up right there, now how do we get it to go to not be on the first page, but be on all the other pages? You just click different first page, it'll take it off there, and it'll start with the number 2. That's totally fine. Let's say that you are doing it in Google Docs. What you'll do is go to format. You'll click on page numbers. You'll want it to be a header, show on first page. No, start at 1, and you'll see it listed there, but not on the first page. Next, something that we've talked about in class is your citations. Your citations need to follow Chicago format. This should be done through a number of different citation generators, such as Son of a Citation Machine or something like that. However, what happens if you're using the same reference over and over and over and over again? Do you have to cite it the full way? No, you don't. So this would be what your original citation would look like. Have the author's name, the full book, all of that, and then the page number. But if you're citing it again, this time you just need to put the author's name, last name. You can shorten the title to it being 4 words. You can name it kind of whatever you want. It should be able to be easy to find, so they name it Children, Adolescents, and Media, and then you would just have the page number. Same thing if you have multiple authors, you would just put both authors' last names. You would shorten the title to make it to where it'd be easy to figure out, and then page number. And then if you don't have a page number, it would just be author, title, no page number. So that's how you would use footnotes if you're using the same footnote over and over and over again. Don't use a bid. A bid has been outdated. If you don't know what a bid is, that's perfectly fine. All right, for the reflection. Now the reflection should be about 400 words. And the general strategy for the reflection is it should be pretty simple, straightforward to get 3 points. It is out of 4 points. It's a little more difficult to get 4 points. The difference between 3 and 4 largely has to do with how skilled of a writer you are. Now, for this section, you can write in the first person. I've told you you can't write in the first person for other sections. You can write in the first person for this section. What you will be doing is you should be reflecting on your actual investigation, specifically the research component or the historical skill component that you had to go through of how were you able to answer this question? What experiences did you have? What challenges did you have? Now, this is directly from the IB rubric. These are a list of questions that you should be trying to answer, okay? But when trying to answer these questions, you need to make sure you are speaking explicitly about your paper. This is the thing I'm most worried about. You do not just want to make up, 150 words about the role of a historian or, the reliability of the sources. That's not really what they're looking for. They want it particularly pertained to your question. How did you come across this in your investigation? And not only how did you come across this, but how did you work through this issue? What did you learn from this process? What was your solution? How did it actually play out in your paper? Now, the prompts in the IB rubric are pretty helpful to kind of start you off on this process. So you would say one issue raised by the study related to the methods used by historians is the challenge of blank. This is where you would have, listed your issue that you had. This manifested itself here. This is where you would give your specific example. So this is kind of where you're talking about it. The first step is kind of where you're talking about it. Second step is where you are specifically citing examples in your paper. And then the third is how did you resolve this, or what did you learn from this, or both? Now, again, getting 3 points is fairly easy if you're able to follow this format. Getting more than 3 points can be a little bit challenging. I will show you the paper that got 4 points and kind of how they formatted their paper. I think it's well done. So they have kind of this little small opening paragraph, and here it seems like they kind of make a thesis statement based off of 3 different issues that they have come across that they're going to discuss on their reflection piece. One is seeking out different points of view. Second is analyzing the validity of arguments by different authors. And then evaluation of perspectives, most significant. Then what they do is they go through very specific examples and their own paper of how each one of these issues was addressed. This is very much how we would set up a normal paper in our class. We have a thesis, and then we go through and provide specific examples. So this is good example number 2. This got 4 points. This is good example number 3. Good example number 3 got 3 points. Now I think good example number 3 is pretty good, maybe not be quite as well written. And they also kind of have this like just opening line about how they've been enlightened by the challenges historians have faced. And then what they do is they go through very, very formulaically. They follow the rubric word for word. An obstacle I found when gathering primary sources, whether the sources created during the time of the event often showed only the official stance. Then they give a very specific example from their paper. They actually give a couple different examples. And then they explain how they navigated through this, what they did, how they actually implemented this into their paper. They went through again, did this for a second edition or a second example, and then kind of talked about their own experiences with the paper, that they're Malaysian, and how that also resonated, which is one of the prompts. You want to have about 3 examples. With this being 400 words, 3 examples seems to be about as much as you can write about in detail. If you have one example that like has multiple examples, so for example, if you're like doing analysis of evidence and you have 2 different examples for analysis of evidence, you can get to 4. If you only have 2, you risk the point of not getting the 3rd point. And if you're wondering what does like a 2 look like, a 2 would look like something like this. This is from average example 2. In this, they are not talking enough about the evidence that they have in their own paper. They're being a little too vague. They do talk about their own experiences. So they talk about their grandparents fleeing Colombia and how that like relates to them writing the paper. But outside of that, there is not a lot of specific evidence used from their paper in their reflection. You need to make sure that your examples that you're reflecting on, or whatever you're reflecting on, that you have concrete, explicit examples and you can talk through them specifically. This should be a good part of the paper to get 3 to 4 additional points, which really is a massive difference between making a 4 and making a 5, or making a 5 and making a 6, making a 6 and making a 7. Hopefully this helps. All of these resources are on your Google Classroom, so you can go look at them.